Hi, welcome back. In this video I'm going to show you how to make and fit the corset toile using the pattern that we created from the bodice pattern in the previous video. To make your corset toile you'll need a woven fabric with no stretch to it. I use calico. You'll need some boning. I use spiral steel boning and I've got lots of these old pre-cut tipped boning pieces which I tend not to use when I'm making corsets. I cut the boning I need to the right length. So I keep these ones and I actually just tape them together to make them the right length for toiles. You can use cable ties or anything that's going to hold the corset vertically. I also use offcuts of steel boning in the centre back. You'll need something to lace it up with. I've got this long corset lace, which is like a giant shoelace. And you'll need your pattern. For each pattern piece, you need to cut a double layer piece of the fabric you're using. What I do is I draw around my pattern pieces with my disappearing pen for accuracy, and then I tack them together. So I'm going to cut 2 double pieces for each piece. For my centre front, I cut it on the fold, then press it flat and then tack that onto another layer. But we need a double layer of the fabric, partly for strength and partly because then we've got something to put the bones in between. Mark where your waist is as well so it's easy to line all the pieces up. And make sure your waistline is right on the grain of the fabric so there's no stretch at all. Just going to pop some pins in to hold the 2 layers together while I cut them out, and then I'll tack them together. So that's my 2 layers tacked together. I'm going to do exactly the same for the other side front and then my side backs and backs. And the front, I'm just going to press it open and then tack that onto a second layer as well. So these are all of my pieces cut out with the 2 layers of calico tacked together. So next it's time to start joining them. So I'm going to pin each piece together. Doing one piece at a time, I'm going to stitch my 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm then going to clip all my curves, and then on the outside I'm going to stitch my seam open by stitching just either side of the seam to hold it flat. So here's how my first seam looks sewn. So I've stitched my seam allowance, I've clipped around the curves, and then I've stitched either side of it just narrowly to hold them open, and then I've stitched my boning channel in place. So it looks neat on the outside. The inside is messy, but that doesn't matter because it's just a toile. So now I'm going to go ahead and do exactly the same for all the other pieces. I'm also going to sew a boning channel down the center of the side front seam, and I'm going to put 2 down the front as well just to help with the bust support, so I can make sure it's going to support my bust enough when I try the toile on. Okay, so these are all of my pieces joined together. So I've stitched my seam allowance and top stitched on all the seams. Then I've stitched my boning channels next to each seam, and I've added extra boning channels on the front panel and in the center of the side front panel. So now I need to do the back. So what I'm going to do is just turn my 1/2 inch seam allowance underneath like that, and then I'm going to run a line of stitching to hold it in place, a line of stitching for some boning, and then a line of stitching which I'll make some holes in between, which is how I'll lace it. And then I'm just going to stitch along the top just to make sure it doesn't stretch along these panels as I'm trying it on. This is how the centre back looks finished. So I've just turned the seam allowance to the inside and top stitched it down. I've got 1 line of stitching to form my boning channel, and then I've just done a narrow line of stitching here, and I'll make the holes to lace it in between those 2 lines of stitching. And then this is my stitching around the top just to stop it stretching on the bits that are on the bias when I try it on. So now all the sewing's done, I can put my boning in. So as I said at the start, I use just these old pieces of pre-cut boning and I tape them together to the right length so I don't have to cut them up. These are ones I've just taken out of a toile that I made for a client recently. So what I'll do is I'll take this tape off, retape the two pieces together at the length that I need, and then put them in. So you want your boning to be the length of this. You don't want to stretch it too much as you push it in, but at the same time you want it to sit nice and tightly into your channel. So if I put that one like that and that one like that, I can measure the length I need. Or you can just cut some to the right length, or you can use some cable ties at this point as well. Anything that's just going to hold it. I don't cut my continuous steel boning to go in at this point because I don't know if I'm going to be changing the lengths this way. And if I cut it to this length and then end up lengthening this panel, I've got a piece that's too short to use, so I end up wasting it. This is more economical this way, and because I've got lots of this old boning, it works out well for me to use this for toile purposes. So now I've got this taped, I'm just going to slide it between those two layers, and it's going to look lumpy because we've got the two pieces overlapping, but for toile purposes it doesn't matter. And when I do the real thing, I'll actually just cut pieces to the right length from my roll of continuous steel boning. So I'm going to push that in, make sure it's nice and tightly in that boning channel, and then pop a pin at the bottom. And you see how that's sitting nice and snugly along the length of it. So I'm going to do exactly the same for all of the boning channels using my spiral steel, and then I'm going to use these straight steels in the centre back, and exactly the same. I've got two pieces I'm just taping together to the right length. Once they're all in, I'm just going to stitch all the way along the bottom to hold them into place. Okay, so this is my toile with all the boning in. Next, I just need to make some holes to put my lacing through at the back. So I'm just going to mark where the waist is, which is about there. Pull it, I can see the tightest part across it there. So that's my waist. So I want a hole either side of that. So I'm going to mark every inch, starting ½ inch either side of that waist. Then I'm just going to match them up with the other side. So then I don't put eyelets or grommets in my toiles because it's just a waste. So what I'm going to do is use an awl to make a hole and then thread my lace through the holes. If you're doing a corset that's for tight lacing with a huge amount of waist reduction, this might not be strong enough, so you might need to add more layers or use grommets if you're doing a really tight lacing corset. But because this is just for a dress and it's not hugely curvy, there's not a huge amount of reduction, doing it this way won't be a problem. So now the holes are done, the last thing to do is pop the lace in, then I can try it on. Okay, so this is my first toile on. I'm really happy with how it's fitting around the waist and the hips. It's too big at the top around my bust, but the actual shape under my bust and over my bust is fine, and I feel like it's supporting me really well. But it's just too big here, so you can see it's quite baggy at the top. So I could sort of see on the pattern where this part was quite straight at the top. I need to just take it in and get more of a curve so it sits against me. You see the difference that makes. I'm just going to pop a pin in so I know how much to change on my pattern. It's hard doing things on yourself. It's a balancing act because you want it to sit against you, but you don't want it to be so tight that it's giving you squish. You see it's just a little bit too long for me here as well. We'll sort that out in a moment. Yeah, that looks nicer. And if anything, this seam could do with coming just a tiny bit further forward. That's sitting quite wide on my bust here. I'm just going to make this panel a little bit narrower and this one just a tiny bit wider so that seam sits right on the point of my bust. Sort of there. Okay, then here, you see it's just a bit too long under my arm. So it's kind of, again, it's a balancing act because you want it here so you don't have that squish out over the top of it. So I'm doing this looking in my camera, it's hard to tell. So I think I need to bring it down just a little bit there. So
So keep it nice and high here, but just you lose that little bit. I'm trying to do it in my screen, this is really difficult. Yeah, that looks good. So that'll sort the bust out. So in at the top, move this seam just forward slightly and then down under my arm. Other than that, I'm really happy with how it's sitting. I'm happy with how it looks from the side as well. So a lot of corset panels with more panels, they're very straight at the front and they give you that sort of squished look. Whereas I like my dresses, when I'm doing a corseted dress, to still have that lovely curve over and in under your bust, which is why I like to use a princess seam. So again, it's not a traditional corset, it's my version of a corset. So that's the, if I move back, go off my toes, you can kind of see that's the shape on my waist. So you can imagine from this shape, it's either going to flow out into a big skirt, or I could make that into a nice pencil skirt or a fishtail dress. That's really good. Now, if we look at the back, it's giving me some squish here. It's too tight at the top, so I need to add extra here so I don't get that overhang. And again, that's another balancing act, because you need it to be tight enough to give you the bust support that you need, but not so tight that you get this squish thing going on here. So I'm just going to add maybe an inch at the top of the back and side back, so maybe ½ inch to each piece of the pattern. Now the other thing I need to change is, turn my back to you, you can see the side back panel is a lot wider than the back panel. So I need to move that over and even up the width of those two panels. And then at the centre back, it's lacing right together. So I can leave this pattern like this, so I know I can do a zip up corset with it lacing right together. And then I can alter it to the width that I want if I do want to have that V going on for a lace up dress, or if I'm just using it as a corset, so I can do it with parallel lacing. So as a first toile and a first fitting, I'm actually really happy with it. It feels really comfortable on the waist and on the hips. Yeah, I love the curve it's giving me. It's just those few little tweaks just to make the fit absolutely perfect. So I'm going to take this off and then we'll go back to the desk and I'll show you how I mark all of these changes on the pattern. Okay, so this is my altered corset pattern. So in red is the pattern from the last toile and the black lines are the alterations I've made. So at the front, I've moved that side front seam ½ inch towards the front. So I've done that by just drawing this panel ½ inch wider, and then I've just taken off ½ inch from the front here. So that will be my new fold line. At the top, I've curved this piece in. You can see where it was very straight before. It now curves in at the top, which should bring that top part in to sit neater against me. And because I've taken this in by ½ inch and here, I've had to just redraw the curve for my sweetheart neckline. So because this panel's ½ inch wider, I redrew that line, but then I had to drop it for the part that goes under my arm. So that, instead of being the straight line as it was, now curves down to here under my arm. If we move along to the backs and side back, the side seam's still the same, it's just dropped lower at the top. Then at the back, to move the side back seam further towards the side, because the panels were quite uneven, I've just made this panel ½ inch wider, and then as I've done it, I've added ½ inch at the top to try and get rid of that back squish. And then I've made this panel ½ inch narrower, but because we needed to add ½ inch for the back squish again, it's ½ inch narrower here, but it's ended up where it was here at the top. So hopefully this will give me a pattern that fits me a lot better now. So what I'm going to do is make up another toile exactly the same as I did the first one, and then I'll be back to show you that being worn again and to see if we need to make any other last minute tweaks. Okay, so this is the second toile put together. So I've moved these two seams in and I like how they're sitting. They're a bit lumpy because I haven't pressed or trimmed any of the excess on here at the minute. So I've taken it in at the top as well, so you can see it's sitting in much neater against me here. So that's how it looks from the front, and that's how it looks from the side. I've lowered it under my arm, which is a lot more comfortable to wear now as well. So I'm happy with how that's sitting, but it's not giving me that sort of squish here. It's sitting against me without making that bit sort of you know, sometimes when you've got a tight dress you end up with that. So it's not doing that. So I'm really happy with how that sits at the top. You see? The waist and the hips are still good. And then at the back where I've just put that little bit extra, it's not giving me the overhang. And this bit will sit better. It's squashing down a little bit at the minute, but that will sit better once I've got some boning in there. And then at the back I've just done it so it doesn't lace quite together at the top. There's the back. And the front. Cool, so I'm happy with this now. So in the next part I'll show you how I turn this into the dress pattern for the sunset dress. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Please leave me a comment and a like, and I'll be back soon with the next video.